Okay, I will call the meeting to order at 8:37 a.m. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all again from 2 months ago. Roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Secretary Halverson?
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Harrigan is officially absent at the moment, but Dr. Harrigan, if you get your audio and video working, please let us know.
I was going to try to call in on this one. So listen.
Okay. Member Holmes?
Here.
Thank you. Chairman Lewis?
Here.
Thank you. Member Martell?
Present.
Thank you. Member Siegel?
Here.
Thank you. And Member Sutherland?
Here.
Excellent. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Will you all please rise and join me in the flag salute? Ready? Begin. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have our agenda before us. Are there any modifications to the agenda recommended? Seeing none, hearing none, I'll ask for approval of the agenda. Second, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. We move on to public comment. This is the time and place for members of the public to speak on items not on the agenda. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? I don't see any here online or any on the site.
The 510 phone number that-
Okay, so no members of the public. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 3.1, Pivot Riverside Update. Or all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to just do one at a time so we can
Great.
spotlight certain schools. So go ahead, Brandon.
Good morning, everyone, from sunny and festive Riverside.
Good morning.
So glad to be back in front of you guys. And I saw you in January, but there were a lot of other big things going on back then, so we didn't get to talk a whole lot. We have a video made for you, so I won't talk too much and overrun that. Just want to say thanks to everyone on the board and leadership. Riverside is awesome. We got a great team. We got a great site. And you guys have so much to do with that. So thank you from Riverside. And here's a little video we put together for you to see what we're up to.
Hi, welcome to Pivot Charter School Riverside. I'm Rachel. Let me show you around. This is where students come for on-site instruction and activities. Let's see what Mackenzie's up to.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie Jessup and I teach ASB here on site at Riverside, and these are my students. Now we're going to tell you why they like being in the ASB class.
I like ASB because I get to learn new skills through that. I like ASB because we get to plan fun activities like today, pajama day. I like ASB because I like to learn. I like ASB because the projects we get to do. I like ASB because the leadership's so fun. I like ASB because we can like find spirit weeks and that's fun.
Hi guys, I'm Aaron Newman. I'm teaching piano class here at Riverside. I want to thank you guys for the pianos. Kids are working on what they've learned this block. We're gonna play a little Heart and Soul. We just finished this the other day, so we want to play a little for you guys. All right, want to do it? All right, here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Yay!
Toilet. Great.
Wonderful.
Very
Thank you.
nice. Do you have any questions for Brandon? He's actually at the site. Board members?
Well, I'd like to kind of hear what you're kind of most proud of down there, and if there's any needs or challenges that you want us to be aware of as we look at things today.
I mean, I'm most proud we're getting students back on site finally. We're getting workshops going, you know, rebuilding the culture that took such a big hit over the last few years. And just the team coming together. You know, I'd like to give a shout out to everybody, but I know we don't have time for all that. One of the recent stories I just want to say about, we recently hired Derek Yip to take over the STC program. And he had a parent come in about a month ago, just shaking mad, saying things like maybe he shouldn't be working here. And we all knew that was just kind of her being overwhelmed. That was about a month ago. And just this last learning period, her child, my student who's been with us for over a year and a half, made 100% attendance for the first time since he's been here. And that's thanks to Derek. And
Wow.
that's especially with that at-risk population, that's a huge win. And, you know, Pivot, we have our stories. I could tell you about the big picture of Riverside, but I really like telling the specific stories where we get, you know, a big win like that. And I could tell a million more. But again, we don't have time.
Thank you.
Yeah. And needs, you know, we've been hitting them as they come up. Everybody's been so responsive. We wanted pianos in the beginning of the year. I think we got them a week or two later, you know, stuff like that. We were doing field trips, getting those back on the agenda, and they're getting approved rapid fire as quick as we can. We got supplies coming in for breakfast and lunch and everything for state testing, because that's real big for us. You know, so the needs, I don't see any right now because they're all being addressed, you know, in real time. And again, that's a credit to leadership. So thanks again for that.
Can't beat that.
That's great.
Awesome.
Wow.
All right. Thank you, Brandon. Well done. Forward to getting by there one of these days. We got a few board members that are down that way. You should stop by and say hello.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Great way to start the morning.
I'd like to visit Riverside.
You can't participate.
Yes, please. We love visitors. We have a lot of fun here almost every day.
No. Okay. Is that where Riverside updates the update?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna do one school each.
Oh, I thought not
Just a
today.
focus,
Got it.
yeah.
That's great. Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to 3.2 financial update from the Chief Business Officer.
Better be good.
First time, guys. Be nice to me. All right, so today. Here, sorry, the TV's in a little bit of a different place than it was last time, but if we move it, the web, no, because the webcam needs to show them, so. I know. It was my fault. Okay, so I'll just stand over here in Dana's spot. So we're finally done. We don't have anything from the 21-22 fiscal year anymore for the first time this year. So we'll do a quick financial update about the current fiscal year and then talk about budget development, which we are currently in the thick of for the next fiscal year. So quick update on enrollment and attendance. Now we have 6 full months of attendance data for the year, which is about 75% of our data that determines our primary funding. So we have one slide for each site to show kind of the trends. So as you can see here, North Bay, enrollment has been fairly consistent, right around 400, and attendance had a dip that we had talked about at the last board meeting, but has rebounded since then, which is great. So we've been having some good results of the changes that we had discussed last time to kind of target those attendance issues at North Bay, so that's great. Our current forecast, and remember the forecast is the average for the year, so it's settled at 395 students with 78.5% attendance, just based on these numbers and how they kind of average out, and what we anticipate the enrollment to remain at for the remainder of the year. For North Valley, you can see enrollment has been steadily growing and actually had kind of a significant jump for month 6, about 10% increase in enrollment, which is great. But again, kind of following their normal trend of enrollment increasing later in the year than we'd like to see it. It's difficult when that happens. So we're always trying to get that enrollment to jump up a little bit sooner in the year so that students will have more time to get used to independent study and complete credits and things like that. Their attendance rate has been dipping a little bit lower than in prior years. It follows the usual trend. We usually start off high and then it kind of dips down a little bit over the holidays and things like that. So our current forecast has settled at 100 students enrolled with 81% attendance. So we had to drop it just a little bit.
There was one time with the rules about how to do this, you could use a prior year or this year's, now it's just the current year.
So for non-classroom based charter schools, we are not allowed to use those. There are currently some provisions that help classroom-based charter schools and school districts, especially related to COVID and the fact that there's a lot of declining enrollment in the state right now. But unfortunately, schools like Pivot that are non-classroom based charter schools do not get to take advantage of those.
Yeah.
So for San Diego, we've seen the largest enrollment decrease from the original budget, but we did that back in the fall, and we made a really good projection then because it hasn't really changed since then. And they have the best attendance rate, as is historically the trend. So the enrollment forecast is at 85, attendance rate 93, and I believe this is the one. This hasn't changed since we updated this in September, October. Riverside has had steadily increasing enrollment little by little throughout the year, also with a fairly significant jump in month 6. And the attendance rates are really following the usual trend, not dipping lower than in prior years, nothing out of the ordinary there. So Riverside has been our steady Eddie this year with attendance and enrollment.
You say 150, is that ADA projection or what is that?
The forecast is 150 enrolled students at 88% attendance, which I think it is 132 ADA, I believe, is the forecast.
So that's the 150 enrolled, we show 168.
Yeah, that's the
seems a
same.
little
That's
light.
the apples to apples, 150 to 168. So we're 18 more than our forecast.
So 88% of 168
Right.
is
88% of 150, because it's an average. So you notice we started the year at 137 enrolled. So the average enrolled is about 150.
so that's this is not ADA then.
Correct. So we have enrollment and ADA. If you multiply those two together, you get, enrollment and attendance, and you multiply those two together, you get the ADA.
Right.
And I believe
And the
on
ADA
next
with
slide-
132 is the goal, so we're ahead there.
Yes. And so these, I know it's a little small, but the ADA is on the left-hand scale.
Right.
And so you can see North Bay's is up above 300 a little bit. North Valley's is at about 81 currently. San Diego is about 79, and Riverside is at 132. And so you can see we have the original budget, September update, January update, March update, and how it's changed. North Bay's just kind of fluctuated a little bit. North Valley, we've had to decrease slightly. San Diego is the one where we made that jump in the beginning of the year, but it's been a very accurate projection, so we haven't had to change it. And then Riverside also has been very steady. We bumped it up just a slight amount in this most recent forecast based on the actuals. So they're the school that's gone up just a tiny bit with the forecast. All right, so as you know, enrollment, attendance, ADA, that is our largest driver of funding, our primary funding source from the state, which is LCFF. So the largest drops here are the orange ones, are related to that. So we've had a little bit of a decrease in the forecast overall, pivot-wide, and so that's what accounts for that 87K drop in ADA-based revenue. We've also had a lot more computer needs this year than normal. We were expecting to kind of go back to a little bit of what our computer needs were pre-COVID, but we're not quite there yet. We're seeing a lot of families still have needs economically and technologically. So we had previously decreased the forecast for computers this year, but we had to change it because we realized in that we weren't ready to do that. Our communities are not ready for that change. We still need lots of technology, lots of computer support, and Wi-Fi devices and things like that. We have had some savings in the budget, some of it related to staffing difficulties. I know we've talked before about having positions that were unfilled for part of the year. We were hiring, trying to find people to fill those positions. And so there's a little bit of adjustment there in the forecast based on times when we didn't have positions filled, things like that. And then as happens every year, lately, we move around the ESSER funds a little bit based on the needs of those qualified expenditures, things that qualify for ESSER funding. So this is largely related to the computer needs. ESSER can be used to support families who have economic needs for computers and things like that. So as we have that corresponding increase in computer needs, we shifted some ESSER funds to help cover those costs. So this is kind of the high level view of the forecast changes. Any questions on those at this point? Okay. So then when we look at it by site here, the changes from the prior forecast, North Bay is up, and it's largely from, they had a lot of that ESSER funding to help cover the computer costs and SPED funding. So our special education funding is seeing a new formula, a new implementation. And this is something that is being rolled out at the state level, but not all of the special education agencies, or they're called SELPAs, that pass the money through to the districts and charter schools. Not all of the SELPAs have implemented this yet. It's not required by law yet. It is coming. But our SELPA, which is the El Dorado Charter SELPA, was able to implement this a little bit early in preparation. We know it's coming, and they had the ability to do it. So we actually are funded for this year now based on the highest ADA of the last 3 years, which is very helpful. So as Dr. Halverson mentioned, asking if there's any of that, not at the state level yet, but specifically for special education funding, we are seeing that right now, which is great. So that has helped the revenue side at several, at all of our sites, but North Bay sees the largest impact. North Valley's overall forecast has gone down a little bit, largely because we had to drop their ADA forecast, but they're still roughly around break even. And Riverside and San Diego as well, very close to break even, with their operating incomes going up since the last forecast. Any questions on the site by site?
Break even's good.
Yeah. And overall, we do have a positive operating income of $89K currently projected. So fairly close to break even given the size of the budget.
Yeah, that's tight.
It's very tight. Let's not talk about future years yet.
Small operation.
You want to talk tight?
Well, we're going to talk about future years. Actually, future years are looking okay at this point. So as you know, we are working with these multi-year one-time funds, some of which are fairly significant and require essentially positions to be added and things like that. So, as we look forward to the next few years, we will be tapering off of those one-time funds, especially ESSER, the federal funds that were related to COVID and the economic situation and all of that. So our operating incomes are fairly tight as we taper off those one-time funds. But at this point, we are projecting them to be positive. As you'll see later in the budget, we do have the second interim budget reports on there. All 4 schools are reporting a positive certification, which means we'll be able to meet our financial obligations for this year and the next 2 years. So everything is looking to be planned out well for the next few years, tapering off of these. Obviously, we never know what'll happen. There's lots of talk, recession coming imminently. We're already starting to see some effects of that. So we'll talk about the next year's budget in a little bit more detail. But
Of that fund balance, how much is depreciation?
Our depreciation, we have a lot of depreciation specifically at Pivot Riverside right now,
Right.
but that should end. I believe our last appreciation cycle ends in the 24-25 fiscal year. So after that, our fund balance will be a little bit, more truly representative.
Any guess how much it is in this one for the 23?
I would have to take a look with Ed Tech and get back to you on that one.
Oh, you've been listening. You've been listening. Good for you. I said to her yesterday, I said, sometimes you sort of know, but then you say something at a board meeting and then you come back and you go, oh, I screwed it up by about 10%. You got to send memos out saying, no, you're wrong. So what you say is, I'll get back to you. Way to go. Okay.
And we do have the data and we have looked at it, but I just don't have it at my
Yes.
fingertips
Okay,
right
you
now.
made your
So,
point.
yep.
Okay.
So does
Not-
comp and
not going to
benefits,
speak
comp and
Not already.
benefits,
You did good.
comp and benefits drops below 22-23. Is that a result of, as that one time and other funding goes away, those duties go away?
Yes, yes,
So the core function's not dropping because those costs increase,
correct.
but there's chunks of operations that leave with the money.
Yes, yes. So there are certain things that ESSER pays for that increases instructional time and, cause certain, hourly needs over the summer, for example. We really ramped up and did a huge summer school and funded lots of extra instruction, things like that. So that is starting to decrease and ramp back down to kind of pre-COVID, minimal summer school offerings for us. So that's part of it. But yes, you hit the nail on the head describing it. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so let's talk about the budget for next year. At this point, we still have only the governor's January proposal to go off of officially, but there's been lots of talk at the legislative analyst office and other agencies around the state, about recession and things like that. So there's also, because of all the winter storms and flooding and, crazy environmental stuff, the tax filing date has been extended. And one effect of that is the May revise and the official budget that will be adopted by the state. Those things will come out before the new tax deadline. So a lot of the, the state's budget is based on their tax revenues. So if they have an incomplete picture of that, then, we'll see what happens with the budget. It may or may not be a huge deal depending on how many, individuals and organizations and everyone, takes advantage of the extended deadline. But it's possible, we may see things change in October once they have the real numbers.
It could be an owie.
Oh, yeah.
Back to mid-year cuts.
It's not going the right way.
No,
Your
it's
projected
definitely not going the
budgets
right
on the
way.
prior slide, is that, any of this is built into that? 23, 24,
In
24?
this slide.
Yeah, is any of those new incomes included in this?
So these projections were based on the governor's January proposal. So I believe it was an 8.13% COLA.
Okay, so the basic things that are here now are included in that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the current assumption is 8.13 because that's what the governor put in the January budget proposal. That's what everyone recommends in our forecasting that we put in. However, the legislative analyst's office is recommending that perhaps 8.13 is not necessarily a prudent number. We may see recession. So there's talk about 6.4% being a number, but it could go farther than that. We don't know at this point, obviously. So
The expenses in the prior thing, that's based on just status quo for the future year?
And the org chart.
um, so this is based on largely status quo, and then as Chairman Lewis mentioned, some of those special programs that are funded by one-time monies kind of tapering off. So
Okay,
you
I'm
do
just
see
looking at
some.
it, okay, but I'm just saying, this is based on no big pay increase, just this is sort of status
Correct.
quo.
Yes, it does take into account a very rough calculation for what we're hoping to do with adding new salary schedules and things like that for the future years.
Got it.
It is in there.
So it's not the status quo.
Yeah, it's not the status quo. Plus, there's some positions in future years as those one-time monies go away that are taken out.
So this largely reflects where you'd like to be in 2 years.
I would say this more reflects the status quo. This is for our second interim budget, so we are certifying this to our authorizers and counties, and we didn't want to put anything in here that you all haven't approved yet or discussed at length.
Makes sense.
So this is largely the status quo. There is a little bit of a change for compensation, kind of, like I said, a very rough estimate, just kind of a broad percentage kind of a thing, nothing by individual positions or, staffing or anything like that.
It's an overall percentage. I mean, because we always, when we give you out years, assume some kind of percentage increase, so.
Okay, and then there are some other changes that the Legislative Analyst Office is recommending that don't necessarily impact us, but it's important to note that they are kind of recommending to pull back on the reins for everything, not just the LCFF COLA. So this LCFF equity multiplier and the expanded learning opportunities program, which is called ELOP, those things don't really impact us, but they are also recommending delaying or reducing those. So it's not just the COLA, they're kind of saying, hey, whoa, pull back on the reins. We see what might be coming economically and we need to be braced for it. So as we talked about tapering off of one-time funds, you can see here our operating incomes are the blue line, and we did a very rough calculation of what our one-time revenues are that we're using for each year, and what our net income would be if we didn't have those revenues in the budget. However, as we just talked about, there are expenses associated with those revenues, which is why the orange line is negative, because we didn't take the expenses out. So as we taper off, the revenues go down, but the expenses also are tapering off with them. And so you can see as our plan goes forward, we're still tapering off so that we can kind of, maintain the status quo, so to speak, with operating incomes being roughly break even.
So that's showing net income less the funds.
But the
$1 million
expenses are
deficit in 24? No.
No, but
No. Net
that doesn't,
income.
that's as if
If we didn't have the money, if we
associated
didn't have the
expenses.
money, we actually do. So
Yeah.
you're saying you're going to try and land the plane even,
Yes.
almost. Okay.
Yes. And the reason why it's negative is because in this graph, we took out the revenues, but we left the expenses in, and that expense wouldn't be there if we didn't have the funds.
Yeah.
So, but this was something that
Got
Ed
it.
Tech and I discussed as kind of just showing the
plan.
magnitude
Yeah.
and how we're kind of honing in
A
on
lot
that
of
part.
services.
Yes. So I know we've been talking about it for several years now, this looming
Yeah.
sort of fiscal cliff is
Yeah.
what they first called it, but we're making it more of a, an ADA accessible ramp instead of a cliff.
Oh, shoot.
That was good.
That's not mine, that Eric said
It's
that.
Premax, yeah.
Yeah,
It
no.
sounded Premax.
Eric.
Oh,
Ed Tech.
no, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I was like, that's a really great,
Way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, Liz.
All right, so thanks, Ed Tech. All right, so in summary, as I mentioned, we have the second interim budgets for ratification on today's agenda. Also, one thing I brought up last time was the funding determinations. We did submit those, and we will continue monitoring them. They have to go through a few different agencies at the state to make sure that we continue to receive funding at the 100% level. So we don't expect anything, any surprises there, but it is something that we need to be monitoring. And I believe we find out in April whether the recommendation to the state board will be 100%. And in general, we've always had 100% recommendation, so we don't foresee any issues there. We will need to continue meeting with the ad hoc budget and compensation committee to fine tune, budget things and then obviously report back to the whole board and make sure all questions are answered before we get to the point of asking you all to approve and adopt a budget for next year. And as we discussed already, the multi-year one-time funds, always monitoring those and adjusting the plan as needed. And I believe that is it. Any questions?
I guess the one question I have is, of all these one-time funds that are tapering off, are there any programs that we value for the kids? And is there anything that we're going to miss desperately and we should try to fund?
That is a great question. So The funds were largely federal to begin with. ESSER is the largest one, but actually last year's state budget included quite a few one-time funds for things like arts, music, and instructional materials. And so those funds are really valuable for funding, programs like the piano class, for example. And we actually, the current piano class is not funded with those, and we'll have a plan presented to you in June for that grant. But there are some things, like that's the focus that's very useful to students. And so we might, need to kind of pick and choose what can we maintain and still be able to fund with the status quo, what our normal funding is once we kind of return to that level. Also, one of the one-time funds is an educator effectiveness grant that funds professional development for teachers. And so we have been doing a lot of that and sending more teachers to conferences than we had in past years, for example. So those things are valuable. And if we do determine that it's a priority, we might be able to shift a few things around to ensure that we can continue offering those. So great question.
So it appears the budget for the next couple of years is manageable. I mean, we're assuming these assumptions all fall into place.
Right.
Got it. 6.4 is a lot different than 8.13.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
All right. So
You might have your work cut out for you.
Yeah, exactly.
all right.
Okay. Thank you for a good update. We'll move on to 3.3. Lindsay.
Okay, all right. I'm going to talk to you guys about the California School Dashboard, which we've talked about before, and specifically Assembly Bill 1505, which passed a few years ago, but how that impacts us as a school. If you have any questions, just feel free to interrupt as I go. Thanks, Liz. Good, okay. So, some updates on the California School Dashboard. So, as you may or may not, I told you or you remember, they paused the dashboard for 2 years of COVID. So, these are the categories, and I'll read them out because they're kind of to see. Chronic absenteeism, suspension rate, English learner progress, graduation rate, college and career, English language arts, and math. These are the SBAC scores. And during COVID, the first year of COVID, they just said, no state testing. They canceled in the year of 2020. 2021, they were like, oh, you can do the state test or you can do your own test. It was very flexible. So they didn't report this out because it wasn't very accurate. The dashboard operates on two factors, status and change. So where are you right now and how does that compare to the year before? So if they had no dashboard for 2 years, there's no change because there was no year before. So they're doing this like Verizon cell bar situation. If you can go to the next slide and then we pop back. What it should look like or normally looks like, and I took this as a screenshot from, is that going? Okay, there we go. Nope. Go back to Pioneer. Okay, so this is what it like kind of normally looks like. This is from Pioneer Heights, a local high school here, back in 2019. We don't have this in 2019 because if you remember, we reauthorized all of our schools, and then so there wasn't 2 years to compare in 2019 because we were a new school then. So I had to grab somebody else, but to show you guys the colors. So there's this little dial thing that they really love, but they also do the colors, so it's kind of just does it double. But we're going to talk about the colors in the next slide and why this is important for the upcoming years, because there will be colors in the winter of 2023 and beyond. And AB 1505 tells you if your colors are this is how you'll be authorized. So it's like extremely linked. So go back, sorry, Liz. Okay, so we're here right now, but I'm going to talk about what we could be in the next dashboard, which would be the winter of this year and what that means for our renewals. And so San Diego's up for renewal this summer, and then the schools follow after that. Thank you, Liz. Now you can go 2 slides ahead. Okay. So AB 1505, Assembly Bill 1505 passed a few years ago, and essentially what it did a lot of things, but one of the things that it did was it tells authorizing districts how they should renew or not renew their charter schools, okay? And there's 2 options for that. You can look at the dashboard colors, or you can compare yourself to the state. I'll tell you right now, the state's not great. So when you compare yourself to the state, and there's a slide on where I do that, and I show you guys that, the state's also hurting. So It's not like a hard thing to achieve. So some people call it charter school track sorting. So I'm gonna use that language. So if you hear it out and about too, that it's the same language. It's not anywhere official, but that's what people say. So there's 3 options. And it's kind of like you go here, here, and then if you're not that, you're here. So if you want to be in the high track, the prestigious track, you have 2 options for this. The dashboard colors, they either all have to be green and blue. All green and blue, those are the 2 best colors. If all your colors are green and blue, then the state tells your authorizer that they shall renew. You shall renew them, which is a pretty strong language, right? You can go 5 to 7.
That's wow.
So they get to choose 5, 6, or 7. So you shall renew if you're all green and blue. This state isn't even green and blue. I mean, you have to be quite a high achieving program to be green and blue. But if you are all green and blue, you get that. Or you compare yourself to the state. And if you are all higher than the state, and most subgroups are higher than the state. So, and I have a slide showing you on the subgroups, but like let's use the math scores. So you have your math scores for everybody, and then if you have enough in your subgroups, like 30 students or more, then you have your subgroups have their own colors. And subgroups are like socioeconomically disadvantaged, Hispanic, so there's race, homeless, like all the different subgroups. We don't have a ton of subgroups because you have to have 30 or more for that. North Bay is the largest school, obviously. They have the most subgroups, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and sometimes special education gets on there. It's like who participates. So we may have 80 special ed students, but they don't all test, so they wouldn't be in that subgroup. But I do show you the subgroups in a bit. So if you're better than the state and all the main categories and most of the subgroups, you get the shall renew for 5 to 7 years. So if you're not high, then we check low. So it's kind of the opposite. So option 1, if all your colors are red and orange, all the colors are red and orange, then your authorizer is instructed to shall not renew, or you may renew for 2 years with an improvement plan. And essentially the authorizer has to vouch for you to the state and say, no, I believe in this school. Here's our plan. Give us 2 years. Okay. So that is the option if all your indicators are red or orange. Or they're all lower than the state and most of the subgroups are lower than the state. So it's really just the flip side of the high. Now, if you're not high, you're not
So we
low,
want our
then you're
porridge to be just right. That's our shot.
Yeah.
Let's hit it in one of these categories and then we're just right.
Exactly. So if you're not high, you're not low, then you're in the middle. That's the one we've had this whole time. You may renew for 5 years. It's really the same process that you've had. You work with your authorizer. You know, they may renew you for 5 years. That's what it's always been. So really status quo here. Thank you. All right.
So, just to remind you, San Marcos is up for renewal next year. Riverside and North Bay are the year after, and Chico is the year after that. So bing, bam, boom, 3 years in a row.
2 years. Because we got that 5-year renewal.
Oh, that's right.
last time.
Yeah, so 27.
Oh, they're all close.
Yeah.
But they're coming up.
Yeah.
They're coming up. And so, and a reminder, the dashboard, which all the authors, everybody love, it's going to have colors this winter. So another screenshot, just where we're looking here. So when I said all indicators, really it's all academic indicators. So we have great suspension rate and expulsion rate.
Yay, Kareen.
Yeah. Right. So that's really, really good. But those are not the ones we want to look at. We want to look at English learner progress, college and career indicator, and then the 2 state test score ones. So I've highlighted them here. These are the ones we're going to look at, and I'll walk you through what those mean.
So in fairness though, is that real, right?
This is real. This is a screenshot.
That's real.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at Gracie's high school,
Look at you.
okay, English language arts, very low. We're better than them.
Oh, right.
Mathematics, low. So English learner, very low. So this is a mainstream public high school in a decent community, and we're better. I don't know if that. That's amazing.
I'm worrying about the community right now.
Well, I mean, so I know.
A new city manager.
No, we're not talking about that. But my point in that is just.
I knew what?
And
Can
the
we
state is low.
please not that, really. We're in a public meeting. So that's what I'm trying to understand.
Yes. You are correct.
They're apples to apples. That's the point, right?
You are, yes. So, and that's why luckily they have that state comparison. And it's not just colors. Because people would be like, who has all blues and greens? Like, it's really rough out there.
Yeah.
So you are absolutely correct. And I do encourage you to look up schools in your neighborhood to get a good sense of where you're at, because you want to advocate for like, whoa, like say what you said to other people who don't understand. Oh, but look at your thing. You're like, wait, like let's look at these other.
Yeah, are we going to close all the public high schools too?
Yeah,
I mean, it's like it's easy to close those little independent study schools, but then we're better than a public high school in a nice area.
Yep, you are correct. But this is the game we have to
Interesting.
play.
Okay.
Okay, so we did have colors back in our old school, and they retire the old schools eventually, so it is no longer on the public website. You wouldn't be able to find this. But I did grab us. Now, we were a different pivot. 18 was the year before 17. This is like 6 years ago. So we were definitely we have different pivot. I don't want you guys to get sad with this, but I want you to show you the reality. So we had colors in 2018. And these are the academic indicators, right? So the two SBAC, we had English Learner Progress and College and Career Readiness. So I told you it's everyone and then the subgroups. So the two subgroups that had enough students were Hispanic and socioeconomically disadvantaged. So I put them on here for you. And I did the colors, and you can see that there was all reds and oranges. So if this was happening back in the old day, we would have had the reds and oranges. And I'm not trying to like make everyone sad. There's like positivity
That's
coming.
old.
I promise.
Made progress.
This is extremely old. So you can go ahead and go to the next one. So how do the colors work? So I told you it's status and change. What are you right now, and where did you go from before? Did you improve from before, or what's going on? So I highlighted where we are now, and all of our schools are pretty similar. And so this is English Language Arts. And so right now we're in this like low category. It's quite a wide category. Your students have to be 5 points below the average, the standard Met, and then all the way to 70. So I mean, it's like a really big. It's huge. It captures a lot of schools. And so if we remain similar to that, it would be hard to get out of this group because it's so big. If we remain similar to this, we need to either increase or increase significantly by just 3 points. 3 points on a standardized test that's like 300 points or whatever, like just 3 points. We could get to the yellow.
Which gets us into the just right.
Which just gets us into the just right. So we've been really focused heavily, the joke is like, we just need 3. Just 3 points. It's really not a lot of points. And so we've been putting a lot of effort into utilizing iReady. It's now like embedded in all of our math and English classes. Students have to do it, whereas in years before it was like, come on, log in, don't you want to? Like it was more optional. Now it's part of their grade. So, and we've done more things than that, but that's a really significant one. But I just want to show you, it's not hard. It's just 3 points. We can get into this yellow. And then the next one is math. San Diego is actually in the low category. All the other schools are in the very low category. The state is also very low. And as you look at other schools, many of them are down here. So we're not anything different. Everybody's going through this right now. But same idea. If we go 3 points, we can get into the yellow. Our schools that are in the very low are really close to the border. So if we increase 3, we'll bump into the low and it will have increased 3. So we can actually get up and over in one increase because it's not where you were before, it's where you are now. So this is assuming we don't change. But if we do change, like we want to increase 3 points for our schools, that'll bump us up.
Who decided, stupid thing, but who decided what the levels were that you're supposed to achieve it?
Great question.
I mean, it's not like
Wasn't me.
some
retired superintendent.
Some godlike teacher said, well, let's make the high this, and let's make the next one here, and based on what?
I don't know. That's a great
They don't either.
There was a
actually
standard
will try to find
question
out.
nationwide that they can use in math or reading or whatever, and then they said, okay, that typically it looks like this, so if you're in, there's some analysis of what it could be based on what actually has happened, and we'll work from there. So this is like somebody just said, this is that.
There's some numbers out there.
It doesn't make, otherwise there's no, who the hell,
I know. And most of the schools are operating down here.
Well, that makes.
So they're really setting up a lot of schools yet to feel bad about themselves, I will say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right, it's a setup for
failure.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
if they give me some logic.
If I can get you an association name or a person's name, I'll send it your
Well, I
way.
mean, they should be able, I mean, I'm just saying, it used to be, standardized tests were based on, over years, what kids did and so forth and so on, or people did. And if you're in the top 10% and blah, 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 so it was statistically an out, and even that's a little iffy, but, and then, so there was some logic behind it. And then they've given this test to everybody in the state, and you're in the top 10% of it. Well, okay, well, that's fair. A little more fair, I should say, in some cases.
Yeah.
Though that, all right, they would reevaluate it every couple of years to say, okay, let's make sure certain criteria are met. So anyway, that's my question: is how in the world they came up with these?
Yeah, and that's a good point. These colors are not comparing us to our peers or to the state. The colors, everyone could be red. So it's not like if you're blue, you're like, you're the best of the group. So that's a really good point.
Lindsay, do they change those numbers every year on the rubric?
So the dashboard's relatively new, and so they have made adjustments to numbers back 5 years ago. But in the last 4 years, the numbers haven't changed. I think they kind of went like this, and then went, okay, we're done. All right, so those are the tables and how it works. I just wanted to show you kind of where we are with the current dashboard. And San Diego actually was higher than the state in English language arts. So I gave them a big kudos. You'll notice less than 11 students, less than 11 students, less than 11 students. For the English learner group, if you have less than 11, you don't get a status. If you have less than 30, you don't get a change. So we probably aren't going to be seeing colors here. But the lack of color doesn't change how you're high, middle, or low. And then the college and career indicator, because of COVID, for the last few years, that's not reported this year, but it will be reported next year. And I have a slide on what that means. So now we're going to compare ourselves to the state. So before I was talking a lot about colors. Now I just want you to look. I looked and compared ourselves to the state. North Valley beat the state in 2019 in English language arts. Riverside beat the state in English language arts in 2019. San Diego beat the state in 2022 in English language arts. So math is a challenge. We've talked about math a lot. I'm a math teacher. I feel really passionately about this. We've made a lot of changes and improvements in how we reinforce our math concepts at Pivot. But all schools are having a really hard time in math. So you see these big negative numbers, but if you look at other schools, you'll see big negative numbers too. But I wanted to show you, we beat the state before. We beat the state before. It's not crazy. All right, so really quick, I just want to give you guys just some more information. So as you're thinking about this, or if you get passionate about it and you want to write a letter, So for the English language arts and math indicators, it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11. Those are the grade levels that take that test, okay? So those are the people that determine these colors. There are 2 mathematical nuances that I want to explain that the state has put on us. One is you have to have 95% of your students eligible for testing test. Okay. 95% is a high number, but it's really, really bad when you only have 50 testers. So if you count up all your kids in these grade levels,
one kid doesn't show.
If one kid doesn't show, right? So think about the population that we serve. We serve. Okay, never mind. You understand. So
that actually is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Even in a school district.
Because
they play it closer because the kids are there every day. But even for them, that could be, it's dicey.
Correct.
They're in the 90% typically, but we're not going to be because of our system is totally different. That's a dumb. It's
crazy.
It's built for failure.
So for my daughter, who's special needs, deep special needs, they keep trying to get her to test.
Correct. Yeah. Because of this.
And I'm like, I'm not sitting her down for a
Right.
test. She's not capable of even understanding what that is.
Yeah.
But this explains it.
Yeah.
Yes, this is it.
That's right.
Why. So you have the legal right as a parent to opt your child out of testing. That is your legal right in the state of California. But what happens is that's not recognized in the 95%. So we can have parents write letters, fill out forms, getting their legal right to opt out, but they still that still counts on the participation rate. Like you still.
So if you opt out, you're not one of the 5%.
You are.
No, you are. They don't
You
care.
are.
The 95% doesn't care how
Well, that's
many
why
options.
did they set these rules up just to fail? I mean,
So for every student short 95%, they will give them the lowest score. So these are the lowest. These are the like lowest scores. So the tests are out of like 2,500 essentially. Every grade's a little bit different. But if your student doesn't show up for your school, they'll give you somewhere around negative 300 points.
277 point something to be
Did somebody
exact.
ever explain that to?
Suzanne Coney
Oh
said
yeah,
yesterday.
I mean, I wanted they took an
meaningless.
average maybe.
It's
or
just
something,
meaningless.
then why?
Yeah.
That's
So
beyond stupid.
I know. So we were really focusing really hard on this because if we only need this is the mind exercise I did with the leadership team. If we have 100 testers, let's say North Bay, our largest school has 100 testers, one kid doesn't show up, they get negative 300 points. That averages to every tester getting down 3 points. That's the 3 points we need to get into the increased area.
Right.
So we're working extremely hard on getting kids in. We're doing food, we're doing activities. We have a whole, we're messaging to families how important this is. We drive to libraries and test kids that live far away. I mean, this could
be over a period of time too, right?
We have to
It's not
get
on
in the school
this
year.
day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right to the end of the school year. So in a
Okay.
few months, and
So we can hunt these kids down. Take this.
yeah, and we do, and we do, and we do. It's super important.
Wow.
And so that's what we're working on. So if you're like, why is Lindsay reimbursing to drive to, I'm testing people.
2010, Rachel Gonzalez's husband drove out to Mendocino to offer the test to kids, and they were going to show up, and they didn't show up. I mean, it was crazy. And I think Rachel
Well,
and I.
it's bound to happen.
Yeah.
For very
That
lot of
is so
reasons.
Yeah.
silly.
And we do have really strong relationships with our families, and they will be like, okay, if you want me to, like, you know, they don't want to, but they know it's important. But I will say, like, you know, in Ralph's case, like with his daughter, there are people who are like, for the best interest of my child, I'm not interested in it. And so, which we understand, like, we're not, we understand, but we're trying to communicate this so that they understand how it impacts us as a school. And if you like our program and you want us to stay around, we're asking you this favor. And then there's another additional penalty. Sorry. So
You're making my day.
I know. I love math so much. So the further you are from 95%, they take a fourth of that difference and subtract that from your number. So not only do you really want to get to 95, you really want to get as close to 95 as you can. So that's really, I showed the leadership team this. We talked about this with all staff. I got some texts like, this is scary. And I was like, but it's possible. It is very possible. It's not that many students. We're a small organization. We feel really strongly about this. We'll do what we need to do, and we have in the past. But I just want to emphasize that this is what we're working with right now.
Lindsay, I think I know the answer to this already, but if we get to 100%, will they add something?
Awesome.
You're really good.
But you know what? If we got to 95%, because this is, remember, it's status and change. Last year's scores, we really got pretty close, but some schools were a little further than other schools. We never got the 100. If we got the 100, I think that just getting rid of these negative 300s would get us
The 3 points, yeah.
Yep.
Just the most ridiculous system
And
I've
this is
ever
fun.
heard.
Yeah.
Someone really
How
was
do you
demented that
all-
thought of this.
How do you all deal with this on a day-to-day basis?
I go to a gal who makes my gray hairs go away.
Let's go to the next one. So there's two more English learner progress, and I just want to explain it really quick because it is an indicator. We're really focusing hard on, pop quiz. Do we need all of the colors to be yellow?
No, just one.
Okay.
I
So
apologize.
English learner
Just one.
progress. So
Get a
when
gold
you,
star.
Way to go.
yeah,
Just right.
just right. So, and we want to obviously grow everything, but we only have so many resources. So what we really need to do is hyper focus, and then once we get that, we can change our direction, right? So English learners, if you have an English learner in the state of California, every spring they take the LPAC, which is the English Learner Proficiency. Well,
You're doing so well.
Assessment of California. You get a piece of paper and they give you a number, 1, 2, 3, or 4. If you get a 4, that's the best, and you potentially could reclassify out of being an English learner. But for our purposes on the dashboard, they've added a 2 low and a 2 high, a 3 low and a 3 high, so that you have more opportunity to show growth. The idea is you want your English learners to grow each test. So they test every year and they should grow. To go from a 1 to a 2 and then a 2 to a 3 is actually a very big ask. So they introduced the 2 low and the 2 high so that a student can go from a 2L to a 2H. And on our dashboard that shows growth, the parent still gets a paper with the number 2 on it. So they don't know really that it was growth. But for us, it shows growth. So this is good that they kind of gave these like middle levels so that we could get the credit for the growth. So this is another one that we do that gives us a color.
Couldn't it occur then make it a 6-point scale and get all this L and H crap?
I'm going to get you a name. I am determined to figure out the person's name who decided about this.
That H in there.
Probably the consultant.
Wow, this is like, this gets heart weirder.
So this is the
I feel like I'm watching a bad horror film.
This is the college and career indicator. This is the last of the academic indicators. And I'm really excited that we have the new academic counselor that we introduced as a position, a year and a half, 2 years ago, because we are going to make big gains here. Essentially what they do is every graduate, they decide, are they prepared or not prepared for college or career, and the state of California decides what that means. So I know this is small, but you guys have it on your screens, hopefully. But it tells you what gets you in the prepared. And what we want to do is we want students to be prepared. And there's some things we can't change and some things we can. We don't do a lot of AP tests. That's not going to be our focus here. We're not an IB school. We're not focusing on that. So we've decided to focus on the 2 areas. Smarter Balanced Assessment, that's the state test. We're already focusing on that. So that's kind of like a twofer here. So the next one is the dual enrollment, which also is often called concurrent enrollment. Students who go to college courses while they're a high school student. And I will say we have more students going than ever before, thanks to Luis. And so we're really focusing really hard on getting students in there. And honestly, it's what's best for them. The types of students that we have are really going to benefit from that. It's free college, that gives you double the credit for high school. Like, it's a win-win-win-win-win no-brainer. So we're really focusing on that. So we're getting students to do their concurrent enrollment. I just want to point out, 1 class is not enough. If you do a semester, a college that's in semesters, we need at least 2. So we need, and I've talked to Luis about this, about like, hey, what the messaging is, what's your next class gonna be, right? Like, not just getting in, but like, what's the next one? And then if it's a quarter college, you need 3 quarters. And so we're talking to students about, awesome, what's the next one? And then what's the next one? And that's going to get them in that prepared category.
So they need basically 1 class for a full year.
Yeah. And it needs to be an academic class. I can't take underwater basket weaving. So we're doing, real classes, English, history. I mean,
but sometimes we do encourage them to take the basket weaving to get them comfortable on the campus so that they can then do the core one first.
But they do go. That's been a really big one for us, and so we should see that growing in the next few years. Oh, I think that was my last slide. Yeah. Any questions?
It's
Thank
complicated.
you. Wow,
crap.
that's
complicated.
head
And
hurting.
she's mastered it well, so.
Third time.
Head splitting. Wow. Okay. Well, now we all know
We know the mission.
the mission.
We're
Do we
referring-
choose to accept it?
We're referring to the mission as moving the needle, like literally,
Right.
on the dashboard. That's what we call it now. So you'll hear us say that a lot.
I think I saw something written in the teacher's room in San Diego. It said just 3 points. Now,
Yeah,
now,
that was it.
Yes.
now I understand this.
So
They tried to explain it to me when I was down there, and I'm like,
Yeah.
now I understand.
Hobart wants to get T-shirts, and I actually like the idea. Have everybody who comes in for
Just 3
testing,
points.
get them a pivot T-shirt that said on the back says, "I'm
Just-
3 points."
Yeah. Great. Well,
job.
get to it. You're up next.
I know. I'm
That's-
just gonna do it
yeah.
from here. I mean,
That's
Yeah.
so complicated to me and so
Silly.
silly. Like we're spending all this energy on this
Silly.
and-
Think
Yeah.
of the
What we have
black,
to do.
what we can focus
Well,
on
and
other
here's-
things.
Here's the worst part. You're right. other schools are low.
Mhm.
They're not going to get shut down.
That's exactly right.
They're not.
Like my daughter's
Charter
school,
schools, but
they're
yeah,
not gonna
they're
shut
never
that
gonna
down.
shut it
It is- So I'm not really sure why.
But so when our students pour back into the public school system, it'll get worse because it's not equipped to. It's just
But there's no consequence. Or at the public school, or
Well,
maybe there are.
there
but-
are consequences, but that's for a future board meeting. There's statuses they put those schools in, and they have to, but they get money to do plans for that status. I mean, it's crazy, but you guys don't need to know all.
Okay, yeah, no.
Just 3 So, all right,
just 3 points.
okay, go ahead.
I'm in.
We're going to talk about just staffing this year and not so much for next year yet. Some legislation on the horizon, the CCSA conference, graduations, the dates are there, and projects that we're currently working on just for this school year and a little bit focused for next year. So this came from that article that's linked there, Teachers Leaving the Profession. There's millions of articles out there, but 300,000 teachers have left the profession from February 22 to May 22, and that rate continues into 2023. Just we're not done yet, so they haven't calculated it. The workload and pay are the top 2 reasons for teachers leaving, as far as all of these surveys and all of these national studies that have been done. This is a national number, obviously not California. COVID burnout's number 3 on the reasons why they're leaving. If you'd like to read the article, there's the link. We already have 3 staff that will be moving on from education next year. That is not including Lindsay. So it's 3 other staff that literally are just like, I'm done with education. So that we know won't be back next year. So luckily we know in advance. I love that when that happens, so we can plan for it. It's always great. So thank you all who have done that for us. We have recently hired a new ELD teacher, and those of you who are your gears are going, you're like, wait, I thought you had a new ELD teacher last year. Well, we did. And her name was Shayna Calkins. She was exceptional. She stepped up. She and Teresa House developed the program to be what it is, which is way better than what it was. And we were hiring for what we call a newcomers. We're going to reword that. But students who just come into the country straight from another country and don't speak any English. And this gentleman happened to apply for that position. And meantime, Shayna was also being trained to be an educational coordinator, and she was loving it, and she was doing really great at it. And I'm like, hey, what do you think? So this young man just started 2 weeks ago, and I'm super, super excited about that. And as Lindsay showed you on the dashboard, it really matters. And these kids, independent study should be able to work for these kids just like everyone else. So I'm very passionate about the fact that
second language program.
Yes, English language
And
development.
just a suggestion when you use initials.
Yes.
That sometimes even if we've been seeing it a lot, I don't remember what they stand for.
Sure.
Even though you want to show off, and then I got to ask a stupid question. So if you could spell them out, sometimes I would.
Yes, English language development. Thank you. You're absolutely right. And LPAC is English language proficiency.
See,
I
assessment
just
of
had it.
California.
Yes.
You've had it, and then
We need more
assessment.
acronyms around here.
No.
Yeah, assessments for California. Anyway, so we are very grateful to Shayna and Teresa for bringing this program to a new level, and then very excited that that Lucas will be taking it and running with it. He has a lot of experience doing it. So there's just a couple of pieces of legislation. I'm not going to read this to you. Obviously, you have it in your board packet. The number 1 up there on average daily membership, a whole new terminology that the legislators thought was going to be helpful, is going to fund certain schools, the legislation based on enrollment as opposed to average daily attendance, which would help us if we were going to ever fall into that category and they don't take charters out of it and everything else. In the past, they've, taken independent study charter schools out of legislations that were going to be a positive net effect. So we don't know. So
Enrollment and not attendance. That's a great policy.
well,
there's
there's a lot of pushback on this one. Because then there's no incentive.
You're
for
not
the parents.
incentivizing education.
Exactly. I'm not saying I love it. I'm just saying it might
It
help
could be
us
I
financially.
get it.
I don't love it as an educator. Clarifying the right to appeal This is one of our few Republicans in Sacramento that's working on charter schools issues. It's just clarifying some language that is as clear as mud, like most of the charter legislation. So we're following that one. Go ahead. Not a voucher. That's actually a pre-Mackian statement. The not a voucher legislation. Basically, there's legislation being proposed that the money can go with the kid to private and sectarian schools, but the author of the bill is saying, but this isn't a voucher. That's why Eric called it the not a voucher legislation.
I'm surprised that Republicans submit bills anymore.
So
These are all dead.
yes, but it's
Right.
it's interesting that they feel like charter schools. Anyway, just I'm following it. It is interesting. That's all.
Yeah, at least there's the ideas out there.
And any unused funds can be rolled over from year to year. Some kid could become a millionaire on this stuff. Anyway, this is also, this is a charter legislation. It might actually get approved because they don't care on stuff like this. It's just terminology. Remember, we used to call ourselves hybrid, and at one point we were blended, and now everybody's wanting the word flex. Even online, flex-based, like flexible. Even on EdJoin, which is where we get all of our staff, right? We post positions on EdJoin.
Right.
It's the statewide public school hiring portal. And you're even seeing flex in district references. Hybrid and flex is starting to show up because they're trying to advertise positions to attract teachers. And so we put it on ours too. I'm like, hey, we worked on this with our educational coordinators last year. We are flex, and we're putting it on there too to attract teachers. So A+ is an organization we do not belong to. If you care to know why, I'll tell you some other time. They're also looking at trying to change the non-classroom based term for these schools, which I really appreciate the work of A+, but we're just not a member. So that's what that is. I'm following that. You'll hear us start using flex, especially if it gets approved. So. Right, just kind of a cool thing. We had 12 staff attending the 2023 California Charter Schools Association Conference. I'd sent that out to you guys a couple months ago. If you had wanted to attend yourself, so it was great. It was very well represented by all schools. Travis was there, Corrine was there, Lindsay was there, I was there. So it was quite nice to have that group there, and we all learned something. Did you learn something, Travis?
I learned a lot.
Yeah. Corrine did too. I'm sure. So here's graduations. Anybody going to be attending, please let me know.
Yeah.
I should do both of them.
SoCal?
That'd be great.
Okay, that'll be awesome.
I'm going to try and catch San Diego.
Yes.
You need to.
Thank you.
Yep, got that. So, all right, thank you. Current projects, as you know, we're working on the classified and administrative salary schedules, similar to what we did with the teacher schedules last year. We're really focusing on streamlining and efficiency. Our student information system was bought out a couple of years ago. It's a positive thing overall because the folks that bought it out are making changes and listening to people like Lindsay, not all the time. Now I'm bugging the heck out of them on certain things. So we're really looking at streamlining policies, procedures. I've been spending a lot of time on this, as well as hiring. We've already posted. This is the earliest we've ever posted for teaching positions, knowing what we need, and for other positions as well, we're posting and hiring and interviewing quite a bit. It's lots of time interviewing. So we're refining our interview process as well, trying to streamline that as well. So questions on that? It's kind of just wrapping up 23. We all have lists called what are we doing for 23, 24, and we're all starting to work through those as well.
Any questions of the executive director? Thank you. I know.
Have you
I think after Lindsay's report, we're all just kind of.
No, just 3 points. It's fine.
Well, it's been a heck of a, especially after all this other crap for the last 2 or 3 years. To bring it all back.
Yeah.
No easy thing to do, period. And then get it to the kids especially, with the staff and so forth. It's an amazing feat. They come back and they're almost starting over again in many ways.
Yes.
So that's, there you go. To everybody who does it. Heck of a year.
Yes.
Good in many ways and then tough too.
Yes. Less people dying, that's always good.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to 4.1. This is the Form 700 filing. I trust all of us have turned it in.
I have not, I owe it.
April
And I will-
1st.
I will get it.
It's due April
I
1st.
left it on my desk when I ran up here.
Brittany even like filled it out for us. That was like
I know.
A
I know.
plus
I've got it in
service.
there. I know.
I mean,
She said,
wow.
mine was,
Mine is
have you
in.
mailed it yet?
I mean, come on. She couldn't
All
make
right
it easier.
already. No, now with her now, I get it, do it, sign it, put it back in the mail. She's
Brittany actually was supposed to be coming in last night. She had
Okay.
a family issue, emergency, so she could not. She apologizes. So I said it's a Form 700, and these are all returning board members.
And she filled it out for us pretty
And
much.
she
I
did
mean,
an
She made it very
awesome
easy.
job.
No, she does an awesome
Filling it
job.
out.
She sends us an email, here it is, here's a copy of it, and I'll send you in the mail too. Oh, right.
With a self-addressed
I
stamped
know.
envelope.
I know.
That was
I know.
perfect.
Sat in my
That's
mailbox
right.
because of the blizzard. The little handle on my mailbox was up for like 5 days. I'm like, Brittany, if it doesn't get to you, it's not my fault. It's the mail. Like they weren't doing mail for
Well, she did good.
a month.
are there any members of the public that wish to speak on Form 700 filing? Okay, hearing none, then we'll all have them in 5-6 days. 5 days. Okay,
Yeah, I got it.
great.
I'm gonna
Oh.
text you.
Okay, item 4.2 is a resolution for transitional kindergarten changes. I think we discussed this last time that we were going to get out of this business. So this looks like the resolution getting us out of this business. Liz, do you want to?
Sure, I'll just make a few highlights. So in January, you had agreed and given us guidance to move forward with this. So this is the official documentation that would essentially change the grade levels served by all of the Pivot charter schools to no longer include transitional kindergarten. So this affects Pivot North Bay, Riverside, and San Diego, because those are the 3 schools that have elementary programs. So there are a few, kind of nuances where our charter documents say that we offer transitional kindergarten through 12th grade and things like that. So there are just some of those points highlighted here that this resolution supersedes those, and that those our authorizers agree with. It's not a material revision to our charter, so we don't have to bring them any official updates for their boards to approve or anything like that. So when we are up for renewal in the coming years, the charter petitions and all those documents will be changed at that time, because that is the normal timeline to make changes in those documents. So we don't have to do a huge, extensive, revamp of everything now. And we'll have this resolution, and then notify the CDE of the changes, and ensure that any UPK, Universal Pre-Kindergarten grant funds that were targeted towards this grade level will be returned to the CDE.
This is what we said we wanted to do. Any board member comments? Okay, any members of the public wish to speak before we take action on 4.2 transitional kindergarten changes? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion. Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Holmes, second Martell. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. 4.3 then, this is the required readoption of the COVID-19 safety plans and ESSER 3 safe return instruction plans. So this is probably the last time we're doing this, huh?
Close to the last time. I think we might need one more. No, this might be the last time. There is a timeline that ends unless things have been pushed back. I believe it was in September 2023. So that is 6 months from now. And so this might be the last time we do it, as the ESSER 3 timeline is kind of, ending. So there have been no changes to these additions. Our COVID coordinator and COVID team reviewed them, and they are, we determined that there was not a need to make any changes at this time. So the content is the same as the last version that was approved, but it is required that the board readopt these every 6 months until the time period ends.
So this, we're basically affirming our current policy.
Correct.
Okay, any discussion of board members? Any members of the public wish to comment on 4.3? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to readopt our, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. 4.4, second interim budget report. Liz.
All right, So we have, as usual, separate items for each schools for the interim budget reports. And as I mentioned in the financial update, each school is reporting a positive certification. And I actually did bring your comment from the last meeting to Riverside County, and they're looking into it for me as to why they don't have the little checkbox on their version of the form. You all had asked why they didn't have the positive, qualified, and negative certification the same way as the others do. So they're looking into that. Yeah, these were submitted by the March 15th deadline, so this is a ratification rather than an approval. But we've already presented all the data, and the forecast is the same as that was presented in the financial update.
Okay, any discussion of board members on items 4.4 through 4.7? Always interesting reading. Are any members of the public wish to speak on items 4.4 through 4.7? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion on all four of these items with the record indicating separate votes.
So moved.
OJ, thank you. Pat, second, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, those are approved or ratified, excuse me. Here we have the consent agenda. We have the consent items, minutes, and check registers. Any questions on any item on the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, any member of the public wish to speak on any of the consent agenda items? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is approved. That brings us to our public announcement for closed session. So we will be moving into closed session. We'll take a break for a couple minutes and then move into closed session to discuss conference with labor negotiators, government code section 54957.6, all agency designated represented personnel, and 7.3, public employee performance evaluation, government code section 54957. And then at that, we will reconvene into open session. So we're in recess. Thank you. Okay, we're out of closed session. The board took no reportable action. And so our next regularly scheduled meeting is June 3rd.
I can't do that.
We actually, and we also set a budget workshop meeting for May 10th.
Did I mention I can't do June 3rd?
Yes. I think you did when we said it. May 10th, budget workshop, June 3rd is the next special meeting. I appreciate everybody making dates on graduations too. That's great. I was glad to hear some of you can do that.
I can't make it on the 3rd either.
Oh, you can't? Oh.
Wait a minute. She says that she gets attention.
Well, I just realized.
No, because we knew.
You ignored me.
Well, no, because she's a
I
second.
got ignored. I feel really
The second board. No, we knew that. Well, we have to address that on the 12th or the 10th. So you or Jana should send out a doodle for board members for dates in June then. We need to
Sorry
push it
about
back.
that. I just had something this week added to my calendar.
Okay,
And then,
it's
so
June
we'll add that to the May
June
agenda,
3rd.
changing the board meeting in June.
Yeah.
Jana, you have two board members that can't make the board meeting in June now. So on the May 10th workshop, we'll add an item on new meeting date. And we should doodle poll the board members before then.
You want to try to coordinate it with the graduation? Like we used to?
There
It has
there
to
isn't
be-
one. They're during the week.
That's-
I can't do that.
Yeah,
There's one on, I think there's one on Friday. Who is it? Oh, we can't move it anyway.
we can't move it. We gotta be here.
God dang it. I hate that they passed that stupid
Yeah,
thing.
pretty poor.
Oh, sorry. I said dang it.
Dang.
All right, there being no other business, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much.